Good morning, Samoa, and welcome back to Star Trek Season 3. No, Strange New Worlds. I'll never learn. Man, we've had a lot of really bad intros recently, haven't we? Some people probably think it's like a joke. No, they're just going poorly. Strange New Worlds, Season 3, Episode 4, A Space Adventure Hour, which, this is going to be an odd one to review. I don't know how long the stream is going to be. We'll see. But this is an episode that I think has kind of two distinct parts. I mean, you could keep breaking it up probably a heck of a lot. But you have, I'm going to go with two. We've got this. Oh, you can't see my mouse when I'm streaming like this. Of course, 60s Star Trek TOS parody satire thing. And Dixon Hill is, what was it actually called? My goodness, I can't remember. Whatever the, Detective of the Week is. That's a lot of candles. Whatever the Detective of the Week is, that's actually the bulk of the story. I mean, for one, it definitely was not the episode I was expecting going in a lot of ways. I thought this was going to be the episode, kind of like the musical one, where they just somehow justify it's a 60s sci-fi. But it was Dixon Hill, which is interesting, because as I understand it, the Dixon Hill episodes usually aren't that popular. But there's an anecdote I recall. I don't know what season it would have been. I think TNG. Like mid-late TNG, where they brought on a new writer, and it was one of the holodeck episodes. Might have even been Fistful of Data. In my mind, it's a Western for some reason. But the writer was like, why are we writing these holodeck episodes? Like, let's just get rid of them. No one likes them. And then everyone kind of looked up in silence, unwilling to say that it was like Gene Roddenberry's personal request because he loved the holodeck episodes, and so he made sure they kept writing them. But hey, I actually like most of the holodeck episodes, so yeah. I'll open with that. Difference in expectations definitely had an effect on my watch through, because I don't think I can stall it anymore. I don't know. This one didn't really do it for me. If I'm being honest, this one didn't super grip me. There's a few reasons that. One, which I'll get into, I think, near the end of the stream. I'm very disappointed that the only thing we seem to be able to do with Spock in Strange New Worlds is romances. And it's a bit annoying going from one to another. But more, importantly, because, heck, the wedding one, I love the wedding one. Wedding Bell Blues is just about that romance. So, hey, no, the other one is I'm not entirely sure what this episode is trying to be outside the character work being done. It felt like it wants to be this murder mystery thing, right? But it obviously, for fun, I think, kind of like that triple cereal commercial Discovery did, has the sci-fi 60s parody at the front and end. That's fine on the surface. But it kept throughout the mystery sprinkling in a lot of those satire and niche Star Trek-y things. Like, someone finally, I'm sure, fulfilled a decades-long dream of canonizing it was Arthur Conan Doyle that's Spock's ancestor and not Sherlock Holmes, the fictional character. But my point is, it feels like it's trying to achieve both, and in doing so, not really achieving either well. Let's start with the mystery plot, because it's more substantial and the meat of the episode. That's why I said I probably can't tell you exactly why it wasn't really gripping me. A lot of the complaints, I'm gonna level it the mystery. You could also level it like Sherlock Holmes, and I've read all the Sherlock Holmes story. I liked them generally. I mean, I managed to read all of them, so clearly it couldn't have been that bad. Um, but I think I was struck watching this one of Doctor Who's. Come on, give me a good establishing shot of Doctor Who's Agatha Christie story, The Unicorn and the Wasp, which I love. I'm one of the half people that love that episode. And I don't know, the mystery itself felt rather contrived in a few places, which isn't necessarily a plot hole, because this is essentially a Generation 1 general purpose story generator, AI story generator. So, like, yeah, I think in this interview scene, she just, when she starts accusing everyone, she seems to know things that I don't really understand how she would know. Like, she goes into this whole thing about the specific color of lipstick that she's using and when it was introduced and how it's glossed the covers of this specific magazine. I'm like, how do you know this? Data has a very similar scene in, I think, the first holodeck episode. But whenever he does the Sherlock Holmes one, and it's the build me a story that is capable of defeating Data, that one. He has a very similar thing where he just solves it instantly because he knows everything. But with Data, he's an android who's committed to memory, like the entire works of Sherlock Holmes, and also just probably everything in the databanks about that time period. So for Leon, I'm sure she is a capable investigator. She is ship security. But maybe I'm not recalling it, but I feel like that hasn't been demonstrated until this episode, where she has almost Sherlock Holmesian abilities, but with knowledge that doesn't make a lot of sense because she doesn't actually live in this time period or fictional world. And I don't know, maybe it was a lot of names to keep track of that I wasn't gelling with it. There's like the extreme amount of random evidence and stuff littered around the crime scene. The Kirk, I'm going to call them by the people's names because I do not know the holodeck characters' names. Kirk's like comically large bracelet, which felt like an AI thing generated so you'd notice because it's important to the mystery. That's more of a funny thing. But of course, when you're not as engaged with a story, I feel like the nitpicks can really start to come out, where those little details you might not have otherwise noticed, you just complain about more. Also, come to think of it, Did this guy, loads of stuff, sorry, this is a detail that has genuinely just occurred to me. This guy died in a bath, right? As I desperately try and find a frame that I can actually use. And there's, as I said, a comical amount of evidence strewn across this bathroom. Not just like the one clue that gets you to the next, all the clues. There's like Pike's ripped up contract. There's the actual film reel tape. I don't know why that was there, but that was in the bathroom. Why was there a film reel tape? I guess. No, I genuinely have no idea. This is some guy's house, and there were like original cuts of an episode, I guess, that they've yet to film, because otherwise it'd presumably be literal cut up, but I don't know how actually 60s television filming works. You had one of Kirk's bracelets. You had that script with the cover ripped off. Like, did all this happen while the guy was in the bath? Did everyone come and, like, beg for the job back? Like, bring the editing film reels, which probably shouldn't be exposed to moist air? It was like, why have we set up such a contrived mystery? And, like, narratively, that's not a plot hole, because it is a fictitious mystery. But it means that I really struggled to engage. It felt like there wasn't... It felt like we had the start where you go to the crime scene, but then we instantly got every clue and went straight into the scene where you reveal who the killer is. I'm like, where's the middle? I don't know. I feel like it was a mystery that didn't have any investigation. It just had the accusatory parts. And so I struggled to really get engaged with the mystery. However, I did like Pike in this. I understand. I spent some time between finishing these episodes and doing these streams on Reddit, like the 10-20 minutes between those two events. And apparently he's fairly Gene Roddenberry. I wasn't sure because I don't actually know that much about Gene Roddenberry. But apparently that seems to be what they're going for. But either way, I thought it was a good performance, and it took me a moment to go, wait a minute, is that Pike without his hair? But yeah, that's honestly probably all I have to say about the mystery section, except the bit that really bugs me, knowing, maybe, Star Trek American Productions, I will say that is different, but when film's expensive, when you cut, I don't know why this one camera kept rolling, which was like the crux to the whole mystery, which again, fictitious mystery, but made it unsatisfying, that you wouldn't be rolling this sort of like blooper reel or argument or everything on the screen, which leads me to believe again that the mystery isn't actually the focus. Because all that would be fine in an episode that's, like, got a mystery backdrop. I mean, take the one with Moriarty in the holodeck, the first one. That mystery does not matter at all. Like, it's, the episode is not about whatever mystery was going on there. That's perhaps an extreme example, but whatever. Hang on, this guy has loads of film canisters. Does he do the editing in his house? Or are these final? You know what? I can't... I'm going to talk about the film canister thing anymore. So yeah, well, it's not plot holes. You can't say the world is illogical because it's fictitious. It still affects my ability to engage with the fictitious mystery. Because, I mean, in the end of the day, both the stories here are fictitious, So I don't know then, are we focusing on the Leon-Spock relationship? Which maybe, but I don't think there's enough for that to kind of solely carry the episode. Or are we actually doing a 60s satire, Star Trek satire the whole way through? It's largely a behind-the-scenes satire. Which does bring me to the satire part. There were some bits I liked. I really like the end credits thing where they went through the blooper reels, which is, some people point out to me, Jonathan Frakes did direct this episode, and you can hear him as the director in universe, like shouting at the people and stuff. It's very obvious once you know, but it's really funny because Jonathan Frakes is the one who directed the Riker maneuver thing. But no, I generally thought this was great. I think an episode that committed to this would have really worked. Before I talk about this, though, actually, fantastic Kirk poses from Paul Wesley. I want to bring up Doctor Who, which has an episode called Twice Upon a Time. I actually quite like that episode. It's the 12th Doctor's regeneration story, his final one. I say quite recent, relatively recent. But it's noteworthy because it is the first appearance of the first Doctor from the 60s in like 30-something years at that time. And I have an interesting relationship with this episode because the first time I watched it, I had only seen the modern Doctor Who. So that was my first introduction to the first Doctor. I know a lot of people just died a little inside at that sentence. But no, it does what they do with the first Doctor is sort of a vessel to lightheartedly, I guess Lower Deck style would be the intent, poke fun at the 60s and how the times have changed and we've evolved. It's not sexist. It's not, yada, yada, yada. And coming from a Star Trek background, I very much felt that. I thought it was great. I thought it was funny. 10 out of 10. Afterwards, I, of course, did do the classic Doctor Who's. I watched the original First Doctor, which is slightly older than TOS by a few years. But as part of that, I did the First Doctor, then went back to Modern, eventually got back to that episode, and none of that was there. It's been said that the First Doctor kind of feels like it's written by someone who has never actually seen that era, but has made assumptions based off of what the 60s was like, and wrote for that, which has a lot of problems that aren't really relevant to Star Trek. But it's also worth noting that the Doctor Who specifically is not like going back to TOS. It's not suddenly a never-ending barrage of like sexism and racism and yada yada yada. But spiritually, I felt a lot of that in here, to the point where, especially as a cold open, and this is why it kind of affected my enjoyment of the whole episode, as a cold open that does not go justified to like here, I think. To be fair, they do mention the actors fairly early on. It felt like it might have been going for the Lower Deck style, laughing with, not laughing at, but had a lot of like, you're trying to satire TOS without actually kind of having, you know what it is? It's the 2009 Kirk thing. That's what it is, but with like a comedy spin rather than a drama spin. You don't actually know what Kirk's like. You've remembered the pop culture description of Kirk. That's the 2009 Kirk. The voice thing, the whole like William Shatner impression of talking, I know that for a lot of people, watching TOS is exactly like this. And if you're one of those people, this is probably going to sound a bit frustrating, but I've never seen that. I think I can kind of see what people are making fun of, and then for comedy exaggerating like 1,000%. But it was so grating. I hated every second of this scene just because of how Paul Wesley talks. And I know it's that Kirk impression. I was going to say if you don't know and then do a Kirk impression. No, it's exactly like this. I mean, so 10 out of 10 William Shatner talks weird impression. But even if it was good, that would have ruined it for me. And I was genuinely afraid of being trapped 45 minutes of listening to that. So actually, if you do genuinely think William Shatner sounds like that, I now understand your pain. I guess you can look at it that way. I feel what this does best is some of the smaller jokes, like for just everything being super colorful was honestly maybe not the uniforms, but God, I want these lights in Strange New Worlds. But like the fact that the cameras and consoles are positioned so that everyone has like this weird upskirt thing and they very much like bring attention and satirize that. I'm like, those little details works. The screen, the view screen, the general aesthetic is pretty good. It's a little more windy than feels genuine, like tape reel than feels genuine, but that's probably more of a nitpick. I mean, it is satire. But I just felt, we'll get to that. Like, this Alien is a great example because I get what they're going for. It's the puppety old style effects. But also, for some reason, we have them blended with what feels like a very modern mask thing. But also this whole puppet eye stock thing. Like, I don't think there's any villain in TOS where you can see the guy's hands reaching behind manipulating the puppets. There are some very obvious puppets. There's some flowers they like doing that's clearly just a hand, but it feels disingenuous to shows of the times that genuinely did amazing things with their budgets and still had like, sometimes you could tell, yeah, they're puppets, but I've never seen one that bad, but also that good. It's a bizarre twist. Like, if TOS was actually doing this, I think they might have wires from the ceiling, so you'd have an actor's arm actually going in there to get the length, but then they'd be lifted up by the wires, because this would be too obvious, and of course those black hands there are unforgivable. But yeah, I actually liked the kind of gag that it's a room they've built off the view screen. Can I get a good frame of that? Which I don't think is how TOS worked at all, but that's the sort of working with him in a limitation I think they did do well. And actually, more subtle stuff, like this whole background is top tier. That looks amazing. But the background is top tier. So yeah, it just felt like very much like a laughing at Star Trek, 60s Star Trek, in a way that didn't even really feel genuine. And I feel like coming off Lower Decks, that's really weird. Who was amazing at laughing with Star Trek. But hey, Cosmos, you digging in the chair? What are you doing? You making noises? That's my pug. He's woken up, and I don't think he's happy about the fact he woke up. Cosmos, come here. You want to go to bed? Here we go. Stop messing up the chair. That's right. You get some belly rubs. Yeah, so this was a brief part, but especially after we got here, I was so relieved to see the modern effects, because when it went unopened in the cold, unexplained in the cold open, I'm like, oh no, that's the episode. But this TOS intro, I did air quotes, you can't see it, as I think my biggest like case study for the problems with it, because they did it old, they did it silly. Oh yeah, the whole brain cells thing. I know we have silly or like scientifically nonsensical plots, but those aren't good, for one. And I can go on too long about that, but this is the weird one. So we've done a dumbed down, is probably how I'd say it, version of the TOS intro, to be like, look at how silly we were in the past, you know, how far we've come, when the Strange New Worlds intro is the Star Trek speech. I mean, you have Uhura's speech at the end about what makes shows like Star Trek great, and in the 60s, that the vision, the something better, the captivating the audience, but you're also dumbing it down as if it didn't do that. You're like, it was just the dumb, silly show that would have been bad. I mean, I don't understand. Why didn't we just have him do the Kirk intro? It's literally the same intro as TOS, except for the visual effects. They've stolen the planet I always think is Mars. Like, this is TOS. It really... What are we trying to say with this intro when we're going to go back to that same speech that's lived for over 60 years? I don't get it. I know this is a negative one. If it's like Picard and we have like the next 2 or 3 are also negative, I might just stop, because I don't want it to be the strings of negative. But so far for me, Strange New Worlds has been missing. I've liked one of the episodes, but I really liked it, to be fair. But I really like Leon's outfit. There's a fun one. I feel like I've seen it in, you know, the detectives on the storybooks before. It's very reminiscent of an older... I can't think of a name. Someone's probably going to scream, it's clearly based off this character. I don't recognize him. Or rather, I can't put a name to it. But yeah. I think all that's left now, really, is Leon and Spock's relationship, which I probably said most of my stuff at the beginning, honestly. It's disappointing, personally, to go straight into a relationship with Spock again. More objectively, I wonder. I feel like Leon was already in the middle of a plot line with Kirk and trying to get over that sort of romance that never happened in another timeline. And this could absolutely be part of that. I did like that character work, even if I wasn't totally that invested in the characters. At the moment, I could see it being like a bit disrespectful to that. It's like suddenly there was Spock. They've been building up to it naturally enough. I'm not at all surprised, but it's just disappointing to me that romance, like, is there nothing else we could do with Spock? I don't know. I'm coming to think of it now. There's a lot of romantic subplots. And Banga's not in one. Uhura just got in one. Ortega's is not in one, but is admittedly tied to the Uhura and her brother one. Two of the primary characters. Oh, I guess there's Una. No, to be fair, okay, there's other characters that don't have romantic plot lines. And they're starting to get their own plot lines, yeah. I was wondering if that seems to be way more of a focus for the modern Star Treks as opposed to even, like, just Enterprise and before. The Enterprise was horny. Let's admit that Enterprise was horny. But that's probably more an effect of the shorter seasons, if it's a real thing at all. Yeah, Leon and Spock, I don't know. I've said it before. The romance never really feels right with Spock as a prequel. Spock's never felt right. We've admitted that. We've been over that. But I feel like, at least with the Christine-Spock relationship, you have, first off, the canonical basis that there was something there from TOS. But especially the Lower Decks crossover episode felt like it was building a case that Spock was so distant and so emotional because Chapel cut him off. Because his experiments with humanity with Chapel ended so badly. And it's not enough for me, but I'll admit it was nice to have. And I think I even said in my Lower Decks crossover review at the time, for the first time I actually felt like I could see this Spock becoming TOS Spock. And now I feel we've seriously undercut, if not undone that. If the answer is this one also goes bad, then Spock swears off humanity. It still kind of undercuts it for me, because we've shown Spock's had a breakup. He's had the experience of finding another relationship. Why would the second one be any different? Maybe Leon could die, but when it's just the one, I can understand that. But when he's already had the experience of the heartache and then the reversal of that, finding a new connection, especially when you consider throughout TOS, Chapel very much is clearly into Spock and wants that relationship back, it feels like it'd be very hard to justify, after everything we've seen, especially post that Lower Decks crossover, that's believable, that he wouldn't agree. And even if they do, I don't think it makes the previous 5 seasons work. I think I would have enjoyed them more if Spock, I'll say it was like Spock. Look, I let myself be vicious with Spock. I really do. That's my out. That's my vent. Radio, Prolo, good satire, but fillers, no quality. Yeah, it really felt like it was filling 95% of its runtime. I disagree with good satire, other than the credits thing. I've been over that. But I don't know. I just, what did it want to be? Was it a mystery? Was it a satire of 60s Star Trek, both in front of and behind the camera? Or was it an exploration of Leon and Spock's relationship with set dressing? If it was a set dressing, then then the relationship wasn't enough. If it was either or both the satire or the mystery, then in the effort to do both to some extent, they've done neither well. Fillers could kill the show. I think the show needs filler, what is traditionally called the filler episodes. I am against the term filler episode as a concept. I think you can have filler within episodes. You're just killing time. But what is traditionally referred to as a filler episode is exploration of a character. One of the reasons you'll constantly hear me say I'm not particularly invested in this relationship is because I don't particularly feel invested in most of the characters. Scotty's quite fun. I think this is actually an interesting exploration of an earlier Scotty that doesn't have confidence. Off the top of my head, he's probably the best legacy character so far, like prominent legacy character. But even people like Uhura or Spock or people who I know from the classic series. But no, if like Data would not be as good of a character if you cut out all the random episodes where you just get to watch Brent Spiner play Data amazingly well. We watched Hero Worship, my wife and I, yesterday. That's the one where the little kid, everyone on his ship dies, and so he pretends to be an android. That's just a delight. I mean, it's actually, okay, it does have some heavier scenes, but watching a kid basically have an autistic obsession with being this android and then watching them both have their fun, those are great. The reason these classic characters are great are those filler episodes, which are also entertaining in their own right. The what's it called? The Visitor, Deep Space Nine, the one where you see Jake grow old and his dad like pops up every now and then in his life. The Visitor, I've called like the single finest piece of standalone science fiction I've ever seen. High praise. But The Visitor is, despite that, is still made so much better because we've seen 100 episodes of Jake and his dad and these characters, and we know what these relationships mean. And that episode does an amazing job establishing that. At least I'd assume. I've never seen nothing but The Visitor. But it's still better with all that extra context, and you have a lot of the other side characters in there. I mean, Deep Space Nine has like a dozen amazing side characters, like Brunt and oh man, pulling out Deep Space Nine ones. Rom, who's the Klingon guy? Martok. Oh my god, it's been a while. It's been too long, apparently, since Deep Space Nine. But none of them would be there. Shran as well. None of these classic one-off characters you'd have if... Or at least they wouldn't be as good because you wouldn't have as much of an attachment. I remember early... Well, not even early, like season 3, 4 of Discovery. Somebody said on Reddit, I can name more employees of Quark's bar than I can Discovery bridge crew. I can't now. I've just demonstrated it's been too long to be Deep Space Nine. But at the time, I realized I also could, and I had more attachment to most of the employees at Quark's bar than I did the Discovery characters. I'm very against even the term filler episodes, because that implies a totally vacuous episode. Other than clip shows. Clip shows are just filler. Like that, clip shows are the only type of filler episode in my mind, because they only exist to add time. So yeah, Star Trek has one filler episode, and it's Shades of Grey, the only episode my wife and I have skipped so far. Stress-free K. Oh no, don't you remember? Amanda says she's still a teenager, so we should expect him to have failed love affairs. What, like in Strange New Worlds, Amanda is a teenager? Like Spock's mom? I'm gonna need a heavy citation on that one, because that would amaze me. Spock isn't a teenager. Spock is like 20-something, surely. At least. I'm pretty sure Spock is the age she appears to be, because he lives for quite a while. Plus, Spock's unrelenting logic will help him to see humans are just not his cup of tea in the love department. It's not that humans are just cup of tea, it's that he doesn't... I guess it's not fair to say he has desires. What is it? It's, the episode where they go to, like, this farm planet where everyone should be dead, and there are those flowers that make everyone high. See, if you want to do a TOS satire, just, like, start explaining plots of TOS, and I'm sure you'll be able to come up with something ridiculous. It's I think season 1. But Spock, when he does get compromised by one of these flowers, he has a monologue about how he wants to be with Christine. Actually, it might be The Naked Now, or The Naked Time, or whatever that one is, where everyone's drunk instead of high, so it's totally different. It was the 60s. See, that's how you do make it be like space hippies. That's how I do the satire. I don't know. Yeah, he does have a monologue where he does seem to feel that attachment, but I don't know. Why are humans not his cup of tea when he clearly has, when they're working, like, successful and satisfying relationships with, I mean, I'm assuming his relationship with Leon is satisfying, but he was happy with Chapel for as long as that relationship lasted. Chapel was the one who wasn't as happy with him, I guess, or that wasn't the good match. So I don't know. I just don't see it, and I don't see how you could justify it going forward. Although, thinking about it, we are getting an episode where I'm pretty sure Leon is going to become a Vulcan in a little bit. I think she's one of, like, the 3 or 4 crew members who become a Vulcan. I bet they'll do some interesting stuff with the relationship there. In Discovery, Amanda told them that Spock is still a teenager. Oh, in Vulcan years. Yeah, that's like saying that Yoda's 13, because baby Yoda's 900 or whatever, though. I don't know. I think it's really weird trying to do that sort of, like, dog years thing with aliens. I'm sure Amanda says that, and you can call it retcons, but I think in any other instance of Spock, TOS or Strange New Worlds, I guess you could argue in Strange New Worlds he's a horny teenager, actually. But in TOS, I feel like he doesn't come off as someone who's not finished development. I mean, he's, what, second in command of the Federation flagship? That's not a teenager. He might be, like, at the teenage stage in terms of proportion of his lifetime lived, but I don't think he's really mentally a teenager. That's the sort of dog years logic, or saying that Yoda's 13 years old. I don't remember. How old is Baby Yoda? Yoda was 900. I don't know. And similar with Kess, if you take it the other way. Kess was 7. What was she in Voyager? I think that's her lifespan. It's like 3 or 4, but she's not like a teenager. Maybe she was. I don't know. It doesn't work as cleanly like that, I think, is my point. It's been too long since Voyager as well. My wife and I have been going slowly through Star Trek, because we've been going quickly through Doctor Who. But yeah, it disappointing to get another miss from Strange New Worlds for me. I on the Reddit, because I like to get the vibe of the fan base, people seem to enjoy it, but it's also an episode that people didn't really talk about. They mostly referenced gags they liked in either the beginning or the end, with the bits on the spaceship. But I don't know, it was just pretty empty to me. After his Ponfar, I don't recall him having any more love interests. I mean, that's not really a love interest, though, is it? Like, that's a biological urge. I know Vulcans. Vulcans are a bigger topic than it's worth getting into now. And of course, you have to acknowledge the difference between the actual teachings of Sarek, or Sirach, and how Vulcans misinterpret that to try and become purely logical. And God, that's a like half-hour can of worms. But no, I think it's fair to say in TOS, I don't know, well, even as a like older Vulcan, I don't think he has relationships. One of Sarek's kids gets married. Picard mentions that, but I don't think we ever reference Spock's wife. It could have been Sobak. That's it, right? Sobak. Heck, it could have been. Well, it wasn't Burnham. Let's be honest. But yeah, I don't know. It's just the season isn't really hitting for you either. Yeah, I think I've attracted a subset of fans who specifically don't like Strange New Worlds. I think the chats have been more negative than me, but this season in particular, it's not hitting. Well, other than, of course, Wedding Bluebells. I loved Wedding Bluebells. Through the Lens of Time is the next episode, which obviously suggests some kind of time travel. Doesn't have to be. I don't know. I really don't know anything about these episodes beyond the one we just watched and the Vulcan ones. 4.5 Vulcans. So I guess that means 3 people transform. I think it's Pike or Hura, and I thought it was Leon become Vulcans, but it's also weird knowing we have that coming up, which I've got my my sticky note, the I was wrong sticky note, but I'm not gonna like that one because it's just the reverse of the same joke. You love the musical of most of season 2. That's true. Season 2 was really good, wasn't it? Hang on, let me just get open. Have we fallen, or is straight? Because I feel like season 1 was kind of 50-50. But I don't... Oh, it's been a while, but I don't think there were many episodes I thought were bad. It was more like scenes and stuff will be hit and miss. Broken Circle, I don't remember liking. That was a premiere. Ad Astra Per Astra, I think I gave a 10 out of 10. That was an amazing episode. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, that one was good. That one was good. Among the Lotus Eaters, I can't remember if it was good or not. Let's be conservative. Let's say it was not good. Charades was the bad one. That was Spock. That one was bad in every sense of the word. Lost in Translation. Everyone hallucinates. I have no memory of this episode. Let's say it was bad. Those Old Scientists, amazing. And again, with the musical episode, they did so much heavy lifting, like narratively, and they really justified those. Under Cloak of War, that's Gorn, isn't it? I don't like it. That's Gorn. I'm going to assume it was bad. Again, let's be conservative. Subspace Rhapsody, 10 out of 10. Hegemony was bad. 1, 2, 3, 4. And like 2 we're not sure about. So yeah, a lot of Strange New Worlds. Like, worst case scenario, almost half of Strange New Worlds was really good last season. And they could be backloading their good episodes. Because I really liked Wedding Bell Blues. They can pull it off. But I don't know. We've got season 4 with 10 episodes, and then season 5 is 6. Season 5 is fewer episodes than Doctor Who. Oof. But yeah, so far, and I know going to the Reddit, which is now like generally a lot more negative about the franchise, still Strange New Worlds seems can do no wrong, which is great for them. I mean, they like it. So, but it doesn't seem like the consensus is that there's been any drop in quality, but it's just not been hitting for me. And I wonder why. I don't know. You're afraid of the Muppet episode? I am hyped for the Muppet episode, because bear in mind, right? The two joke episodes of this series are the Lower Decks crossover and the musical. And by God, did they put the legwork in for those episodes. The Muppet episode, like, if anything's going to be a 10 out of 10, I feel like it's that. As long as they find as long as they justify it, you know? Or, like, they open up and Pike walks up on the bridge and he just looks at the camera and says, "This one's not canon, by the way." Like, I don't know. But, like, the musical is one of the most clever setups I've ever seen, let alone justifications. They used their hand wave, what most like writers probably would have done a hand wave, not only to have a fun scenario that the universe was so cosmically improbable, but to have the solution be to make the universe even more cosmically improbable that the whole thing fell apart. I'm excited for jokes about, like, the puppeteers, you know? That one, I mean, it could be terrible, you're right. But those types of episodes seem to be the one they really put their focus in. And so I am hopeful of the puppet episode. If you don't know, they announced a puppet episode. They teased the puppet. Is it the Jim Henson Corporation company? Who I assume do the actual Muppets. The name sounds familiar. Honestly, this might be the first puppet thing I've ever seen, is this Star Trek episode. I guess the concern is, like, what's the plot? Because puppet is more of a genre than a story. Musical, like, we've become a musical. You can do a plot out of that. But, like, if we become puppets, that could be the plot. Well, I kind of... But if, like, they become puppets for, like, a super series... No, what we need, right, is... the Enterprise becomes puppets. But this is also the time where the Enterprise meets up with Pike's girlfriend ship. I can never remember her name. And she's not a puppet because they're not effective. And there just has to be, like, an awkward scene with her on the couch and then Muppet Pike. Maybe even with, like, the puppeteer in the background. He's like, so. That's what I want from the puppet episode. I guess those Mars attacks, K-pop Klingons, and kind of Muppety, and I dug that too. Yeah. I think I have faith in Strange New Worlds to actually justify what it's doing. As much as Strange New Worlds doesn't seem to give two shits about most of the canon, it does seem to care very much that Star Trek is a real universe. Heck, didn't it even justify, like, animating the Strange New Worlds people as they got high? You didn't have to justify that. Like, if anything, it raises questions about why Lower Decks is animated. But I think the Stranger Worlds team are very, very committed to keeping Star Trek an actual world, if an inconsistent one. And so I'm all for it. I think Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I saw someone say they did a puppet episode, which honestly, I feel like I need to watch Buffy because I know it was the inspiration for, like, revival Doctor Who. Apparently its musical episode was similarly amazing. I love the title. What is it? Once More with Feeling? Amazing title. I think someone said they did a Muppet episode. They just seem to do a lot of, like, these weird ideas. Or at least those are the good episodes. I should watch Buffy. I wonder where can I get Buffy? It's probably, like, super cheap. Buffy the Vampire Slayer Blu-ray. Because, yeah, I'd buy a Blu-ray for a show I've never seen. $50 on Amazon? All right. I'll probably buy Buffy. So I'm glad we've learned that Buffy might be worth watching. Wait a minute. Buffy's from, like, the early 2000s. Has anyone watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer? And can they confirm, is it like going back to anything made in the 2000s and it's like a bunch of homophobia and, like, gender jokes that are bad? Or is it actually good? I asked my wife once, I don't remember the context, if literally anything from the decade of the 2000s has aged well, and they instantly said Shrek. And I have to agree, I think Shrek has aged well. I don't remember any homophobia or poor gender jokes, or, you were probably around in the 2000s as I say that, knowing it probably isn't true. But nothing aged good from there. Even Doctor Who has, like, all of the homophobic jokes of Doctor Who are in that era, which is weird because Russell T Davies wrote them. No, it's weird. I don't know why it's like that. But yeah, I am going to assume no one's seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer to answer my question. So I will go ahead and say, very slowly, in case a comment comes in, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time!